Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Tracy.
Hey, it's Pasquale.
So today we're going to talk about empaths and how they can protect their energy.
Ooh, empaths and energy.
Yes, perfect. Right up your
Love the
alley.
topics. Love it, love
It's
it, love
actually a
it.
perfect spiritual psychology topic because there's energetic ways to protect your energy, and then there's also psychological ways, and we're both going to go through those with you. Do you want to start?
I would love to start. So, as we talked about
Age before
before,
beauty.
well then, it's not me.
Sorry.
Sorry. So I think we should just like redefine what an empath is,
Okay.
right? Because I think if you're watching this for the first time, it's good to know. But an empath is someone who picks up the energy of others and then brings it into themselves, and it creates an emotional response. It's not always the emotion of the person, it's sometimes the feelings that become your emotions, right?
Well, we confuse it to and feel like it is our emotion.
Correct. And it becomes ours.
Right.
I mean, that's partly why we want to
do
protect
attach
ourselves.
to it, and it can become very overwhelming. It makes us, feel a little cuckoo at times because we don't understand why we're feeling this stuff, not realizing that it wasn't ours originally. So we felt it from others, picked it up from others, and then took ownership of it.
Correct. Yes. And so that's truly what an empath is, right? We start to pick up the information or energy of other people. And so when you protect yourself, my first rule is always number one, identify if you're picking up energy, right? You have to discern, is it energy I'm picking up or is it mine?
Right.
Because if it is yours, that goes into a whole nother topic,
Correct.
right? But if it is because you're in a room and you're with someone and all of a sudden like your vibration drops or you start to feel something and you're like, just 2 seconds ago, I was happy. That's a very good indicator that you're actually picking up energy and responding to it,
Yeah.
right?
Best question I've found is just simply take a moment to ask yourself, is there a reason why I'm feeling this?
Love that.
And if there doesn't, if it doesn't seem to be any sort of situational thing going on with yourself, you can probably assume that you're picking it up from somebody else.
100%. And like my number one go-to question is this mine?
Yeah, perfect.
Because I instantly know it's not,
Yeah.
or, oh yeah, maybe it is.
Right.
And so I think that's the most important, recognizing if it's yours. And if it is yours, the first thing you need to say before you do any type of protection is, I am not accepting this. I'm letting it go. I'm moving it. It's not mine. You have to tell yourself what
You mean
you
if it's
want to
not
do.
yours? I
If
think
it's
you
not
started
yours.
that if it's yours.
Oh, I apologize.
Maybe. Okay. Now I don't remember.
I get so
But
hyped up into
if it's
it.
not yours.
If it is not your energy. So you are sitting there and all of a sudden you're like, I'm happy. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh. Ask yourself, is this my energy? If your answer is no, because I was just happy, the first thing you want to say is, I'm going to let that go because that isn't mine. Like you have to give it the intention, right? And so for me, if the intention is always, I'm letting it go. It's not mine. I'm not going to take it.
Right.
And then my number one recommendation, the easiest is just to ground your energy, right? And that is feet on the ground, envision roots forming, and just push the energy out, right? If you're in a public place, that can sometimes feel a little awkward, especially if you're newer at it, right? So I always tell people, like, when you feel it, excuse yourself, run to the bathroom, shut the stall, sit on the toilet, and just do it, right? I guess multiple things. If you wanted to, you could actually do that.
I tell people that too, but just the way you said it was perfection.
Just let it go. Let it
Just
out.
release it.
Just let it go. And take a few minutes just to do it, right? I know.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
I know.
that's funny.
I laugh because I used
I'm
to
like
work
a child.
You are a child. She never grew up. I always worry about her. I personally used to work in a very corporate environment where we were just everywhere. And I had no problems running to the bathroom and going, be right back. And then just to get it out, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to identify. And for my number one thing is just let it go, right? Go and just feel yourself release it. Feel the energy fall through, feel it let go. And then ask yourself, how am I feeling, right? Because you need to make sure, that is gone, or I'm still holding on to that, right? Then you want to do it a little bit longer. Typically 3 minutes is always a good amount of time.
Okay.
3 to 5 will typically get it out.
Okay. So from a psychological perspective, I would, it's good, even just having the awareness that this is not mine ends up to be like half the battle.
Yes.
Right. And then the rest is just kind of like that physical or energetic release of it.
Yeah.
And so.
But remember, words are magic, right?
Yeah,
like words, those intentions are magical. They make things happen.
Yes. And so some other things that you can do, again, psychologically, is boundaries. Boundaries are really, really important, especially when like if there's somebody around you that you tend to pick up energy from frequently, like maybe a spouse or, your kids or a parent or something like that. Maybe, a good friend or, anything that you're around. You may want to, until you can kind of manage this better and it not affect you so deeply. I always recommend having strong boundaries with that person, and that can look, in a lot of different ways. It can maybe you minimize how long you're with them, or for how often you see them, or maybe email, like texting or social media contact for a little while over maybe in person or phone calls or something like that. Maybe if they're having, get together, you're planning to see them, maybe come a little bit later or leave a little bit early where you're spending less time there, just kind of something like that. And this is, of course, I'm recommending this in cases where we get really triggered and we could end up like taking on their anxiety or anger or something like that. And then it ends up causing, a fight, an argument between that person. And, I'm talking about like an extreme circumstance,
I totally agree. And one of the things that would add to that is also you can set like boundaries in the sense of, what do I want to talk about?
Correct.
So if someone is always talking about something that you know is against what you feel or against kind of like your nature, like make it a rule. I don't talk about religion.
Off topic. Yeah. Just make those subjects, off.
Yeah. And
topic,
an easy way to say it is just to say like, hey, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't talk about that. Yeah, so exactly.
So don't blame it on them. That's perfect. Just say it about yourself, that it's a commitment to yourself. And, that's great. I mean, for boundaries, especially nowadays, to have anyway, to just be able to, say, what, that topic makes me, it's not serving my purpose. It doesn't, I get very upset about it. So in order to take care of myself, I've made a commitment to myself not to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and like, I would probably shorten that and just say, I just promised myself I wouldn't talk about that subject. Right. Because I don't think sometimes you have to share the reasons.
Well, that's true. Yeah. That's true.
But that's just me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, whatever works for you. Right. So if you live with that person, obviously the physical boundaries are a little bit more difficult. But, you could have separation. That's where like even coping skills and self-care become very important. Coping skills and self-care could even be outside of the house, which gives you space from that person.
Yeah.
So, and again, self-care and coping skills are different. We have a separate episode on that if you want to check that out.
But another way, one of the things that I will always say is like, for me, when I start to feel that I'm picking up other people's energy, whether I'm at home, at work, at the library, at the mall, in the car, wherever it is, right? Like my first number one thing is I just start to just acknowledge I'm not taking that on.
Right.
Right. You walk into a room and you see someone and you're like, oh, that person's real angry. You know what I mean? And you sit down and you start to feel that kind of bubbling. You need to remind yourself like, nah, I'm not taking that.
Right.
Like, that's not mine.
Well, that would always be a great first step.
Yes,
and then
yes,
you
yes,
can
yes,
follow
yes.
it up.
Yes.
But that takes a little while, a little practice for people who aren't used to doing that and grounding and things like that. So if you're, very new to this, that can take some practice. And that's where you can also add on to the other things where eventually the more you practice it, you'll get to a point where you could just simply say that to yourself and do, the grounding release, and it's a done deal.
100. Well, but like with anything that comes to intuition, being an empath is that, right? It's practice.
Right.
No one runs a marathon the first day. You don't ever decide, oh, I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow and actually run it.
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
Right.
Like, I don't think that it's real. I'm just going to say,
Yeah.
set your expectations to reality, right? Like, no, it's going to take you a minute, right? And so sometimes it's always best to practice with someone you care about. Right, to kind of develop the skills on what works for me, right? Because it's not always going to be like just grounding, right? It's not going to be just removing yourself or saying, that's not a topic I want to talk about. Sometimes it's a combination, right? Sometimes depending on the energy, it could be many things, I have so many stories of this like happening to me personally, but like the easy ones, the ones that I'm not connected to, are the easiest to ground out. The deeper the connection or the closer you are to them takes a little bit more. Right. It's a little different, right?
Right. Yeah, it definitely is. Well, because they can trigger you on such a more intense level because they're a loved one.
Yes.
And we care so much about, what they think and feel about us and things like that. And so it's kind of like, especially if it's somebody that you live with, it's, if one person in the house generally isn't in a good mood, it's like it domino effects to the whole house, and you just feel the energy in the house.
That doesn't ever happen in this house.
Oh yeah, okay. Lies, all lies. But you know what? It happens in every household.
It's supposed to. We're human. We're experiencing life.
Yeah,
life
and remember, it's because we love that person.
Yes.
And then we feel very helpless, and then our efforts, we have good intention most of the time, but we want to help. But what ends up happening is when, say, somebody comes home, our partner or somebody comes home
friend, sister,
early,
brother,
and they're angry, and we're like, "What's your problem?" Or "What are you angry at?" Well, what do you think the response is going to be like that? The person is going to get like immediately defensive, and now you're in an argument. So our intention of wanting to help, and then normally, then we can end up taking the martyr or the victim role and be like, I was just asking you, or I was just trying to help, that famous line. But we have to see whether our intentions are actually matching. So the best way we can, you want to jump in?
Wait, can I just jump into that? Because I think there's a valid point in that. It's like, especially people who are in a service-related business, right? Yeah. If you're feeling the energy of someone, you don't have to fix it.
Right.
Right? Like, you don't want to. Because if you're feeling it, you can't fix it.
Well,
in that moment.
I try to teach people, rework your definition of fixing it, because you're correct. You're not trying to fix it in the way that we would generally like think of fixing a problem, like actually like problem solving it or giving our opinion, our advice or recommendations, whatever, but we have to think of fixing it is just listening, offering support and encouragement. That is the biggest support and fixer of all, and asking somebody how, what can I do to help? But we're not able to do that and separate ourselves when we're now in the emotion with them.
Yes.
Right. And so that's the biggest thing of going back to this, protection. We kind of, got off on a little tangent, but that's bringing it back around.
But it's a fact.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So
you have to recognize that.
Right.
Like, you don't want to surge and operate on you if they're upset.
Right.
No.
Right.
No. Go home and be upset and then surgery me.
Surgery.
Like, operate on me. Sorry.
No, I like that one.
It's the moment. But like, to me, that's a reality, though. Correct, I think that's something, because a lot of empaths, because what is our nature?
Right.
We want to fix. We want to help. Right. But if you're feeling that energy, you can't help until you let it go.
Right.
You've got to let it go before you can even step into it.
And that's, the primary reason, the most important reason why even, people in a helping profession, like for my profession especially, is we have to have that emotional boundary with people or we can't maintain objectivity and be able to help them. So it's not like a callous, like cold thing. Like I don't care about people, obviously I wouldn't be doing what I do.
No.
But, I have gotten that question before, how do you maintain that? Do you just not care? And I'm like, what?
No,
it does not make sense.
It's far from it. It's because we're protecting ourselves before we walk into it.
So that we can help. Because again, we can't give what we don't have. So it's really important to, try to, protect yourself from that energy, back up out of it. And I used the practice for quite a while when I was trying to get it under control. That really worked for me. Is really like literally and emotionally backing up out of that energy. So I imagine that person with like that, we all have that ball of energy, that auric field, right? That goes like in a bubble around, a couple feet around us. So I actually visualize that person with that bubble of energy. And then I will physically back up out of it and in my mind emotionally and imagine my energy separate from theirs. And then I say to myself, that's not mine, like you were saying. And I say, and to remind myself of my intention of helping, I say, don't attach to it. I'm saying this in my mind, and it's like a mantra that I'll repeat until I can really let's like separate myself from it. And I'll say, let them have their emotion. Let them have their emotion. Because once we attach to it, now we're making it about us. Right? And now we're no longer helping them. So that completely negates our original intention to help them.
I love that.
Like that?
I love that.
Okay, good.
The other one I like to always, the other one that I will tell you that is an easy one to add is oftentimes you're in a room, right? And most of the time, 10 out of 10, if you look up, the light is white. Every time, right? You look up, the light up there is white, right? If you can just attach yourself to that, one of my mentors taught me this. If you can attach yourself to that light and just look at it for a second and just feel yourself let go by looking at that light, right? So like you look at it and you're like, this isn't mine and I'm letting it go, right?
That's
if you
interesting.
look at it, look up and then look straight, you'll still be looking at it. Do you notice that?
Yeah.
Try it at home. It's a little exercise. It's a fun time.
That's interesting because also like one of the coping skills to like separate and basically like stop yourself emotionally is when you look up. And because you know how like when people start to cry and when they want to stop, they immediately like look up and they're like, like making sure that, you fan the tears away so they don't come out, But there's something scientific about looking up where you're looking, you're accessing like a different part of the brain or something. I'm not quite sure of the specific scientific explanation, but I believe you're accessing a different part of the brain that moves you away from the emotional side.
Yeah, and the spiritual side of it is if you look up,
and then you're looking at
white
the
is
white
typically
light.
like a clearing energy, right? Like
Right.
it's always like you step into the white light, you always look at the white, right? White is clearing; it helps remove,
right?
And so look
that's
up,
awesome.
look at it, and
gonna
just
try
remind
that.
yourself. And once you look up and you look straight, you're gonna continue to see the light somewhere over here. Like it's still the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
Try it; you'll tell me I'm right, and then. We can all agree on it. And then once you're in that, you can be like, okay, this isn't mine and I'm letting it go. And that will serve as a form of grounding as well.
Awesome.
So quick
Spiritual
little tip.
psychology at its best.
Go to a banquet.
Together.
Go into a big banquet conference and all those people, thousands of people all around you, just look up. You'll feel 100% better.
All right. Well, let us know what works for you, maybe what doesn't. And thank you. Our next episode is going to be about empaths in relationships. So that should be a good one.
That'll be fun.
Interesting.
Until next time.
Bye.